Good afternoon and welcome to the Senior Hour, which is sponsored by Comfort Keepers in Home Care and Providence Holy Cross Medical Center. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host,
Dr. Thomas Plagge.
on your hometown station, 98.1 FM, AM 1220, KHTS. This is a show for, about, and by seniors, giving information to enhance one's quality of life. And speaking of quality of life, we have a doctor here today from Henry Mayo, Dr. Anirudh Rai. And welcome. It's good to have you here.
It's great to be here, honestly.
Yes.
A little bit about myself. So I am working at Henry Mayo Primary Care and doing some family medicine there, and looking forward to talking about the current subject on hand.
Yeah.
And what does family medicine mean?
Family medicine is pretty much a branch term where the best way to describe it is I deal a little bit of everything, honestly, and to kind of make sure that every person who sees us has some answer or a direction to go to.
It's a family affair. In other
Pretty
words.
much. We deal a little bit of everything.
So
So
for this
how-
audience, it's Marcus Welby.
Yeah. Oh, who?
Yeah,
So
everybody.
how did you get into this business?
Well, that's a good question. So it usually started off when I was younger, so I could say that these days. Back in the day, it's essentially the inspiration of the anatomy and the sciences. I was always into it. I was loved reading the books on these kind of stuff, and eventually that led me to medicine. I love treating people, talking to people, and it's having that sort of connection with my patient that keeps me going, honestly.
Yeah, I think that would be very, very important.
Absolutely.
Patient-doctor coalescing and working together.
You gotta like the doctor you're seeing.
That's true. And you need to know that you're successful,
Absolutely.
you know. So I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
What do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah, you're a doctor.
That's a scary question.
You mean, what do you think?
Yeah.
Do you
so-
think? Is that it?
Yeah, nobody wants to know what I think, trust me. People just want to get through their day. Maybe with a little bit of added information that'll help them do that. If you can tell, I got my sexy voice on.
Yes,
So,
I hear it. I
yeah.
can have one of those too.
So I've been dealing with a challenge now for, it's a week solid. I went back east over the holiday. Did fine, nothing, it's all good. But I believe the plane ride home was like the petri dish incubator that just
Yeah.
blew this thing out, because within 2 days I started, something's not right. And then, it's just, this is a tough one. This one will hurt people badly.
So
I'm in
you-
pretty
you
good
weren't-
shape, and I take pretty good care of myself, and I have not been able to shake this for a week.
So you haven't had any office visits then?
Oh, no, I did. When I got back, I had 1 day of office visits, and I'm not contagious. I mean, I've been around a lot of people since then because of the holidays and everything. I keep to myself mostly when I'm not seeing patients, but during this time of year, you're forced to deal with people. I mean, you have no choice, and I've not shared the happiness with anybody so far, so I'm not concerned about it. But when you're stuck in an airplane for 6 hours
I know.
plus,
I know.
it's highly unlikely that unless you have a very strong immune system, and this time of the year, I don't think anybody really does, you're not going to be unscathed by it.
So
Especially when you can hear people sneezing and coughing
I
and
know,
hacking up
I
on
know.
either side of you. You're like,
I know.
okay.
My neighbor didn't come over to see me because she was coughing and sneezing and
Yeah.
just felt lousy, you know.
Yeah, and we still have all of the pandemic prevention, pre and post sanitation stuff. I don't ask people to mask up. I don't take people's temperatures on every visit. But aside from that, we're a very clean operation anyway, so I'm not worried about it.
Excellent. Yeah. Now you mentioned like the plane and the current sort of condition everyone's in. These viral infections are pretty common, especially this season. Particularly this season, I've noticed, at least in our practice, and you probably have too, it's a little bit worse this time around. We're seeing a lot more of flu and people are being hit a lot more intensely with the flu. And interestingly enough, I don't know if you know this, but they did tone down from the quadrivalent last year to the trivalent. So they took away the Yamaguchi strain of the influenza, and some saying that may be playing a role, but ideally I'm seeing way more flu these days, and people are definitely hurting, and people are definitely feeling the flu this time around than last year, I would say.
So, okay, so let's just talk a minute for that. Because when I hear flu, I immediately think, okay, there's a gastrointestinal component. Is that absolute, or is that just a myth?
That's a good question. So I wouldn't say that's absolute, but I would say that is a higher certainty that can occur. Usually with these infections, as you know, they go into your mouth, your nose, and inadvertently they can end up into your GI tract, where you could have symptoms of diarrhea and abdominal pain. And in our clinic, we are seeing it.
It's not a myth.
It is not a myth.
Not a myth.
Okay, so I can say with absolute certainty, whatever this creeping crud that I have is, it's not a flu, because there's no gastrointestinal component. But this is bad. This is, a tough one to kick.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also definitely a secondary infection on top of it. And I can't believe this is true. It sounds like science fiction, but in the circles that I run in, we're finding that it's a concerted effort. These little bugs decide that they're going to swap information about how to beat your immune system. Once one sets up shop, it creates a bunker, and in that jelly coating, it can exchange genetic information with, like a virus can talk to a bacteria, can talk to a fungi, can talk to, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. How is this real? And it is, right, Doc?
It is, yes.
What is that?
That's a good question. So ideally, when you're talking about sharing information, essentially it's exchanging. In the bacterial, it'll be plasmids. In the viral, it'll be essentially genetic information. And when that happens, the remaining virus that happens essentially does die, but the bacteria and the DNA remains, and that's what congregates and becomes a bit more resistant to it. And we're seeing, at least in the bacterial world, a little bit more resistance in certain aspects. And some could say, yes, it's the antibiotics that are playing a role, but at the same time, without them, we wouldn't be able to battle them as well.
Yeah.
Well, are you having people come into the hospital with the flu?
Some cases, yes, and that would depend on, as you mentioned, the immune system. And as we do get older, our immune system senesces to a certain extent, so it's not as strong as it used to be.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, and inadvertently, people do end up going to the hospital with even just the common flu, because it ends up going to their lungs, and they can't stop breathing right, and they end up going to the hospital to just get a bit more treatment.
Wow. Well, I think when was the last time I was in the hospital? I had I think they said I had a mild stroke.
Oh,
because
wow.
I was blabbering at home, and my daughter says, "Mom, we're taking you to the hospital.
Yeah.
Something's not right."
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know, but I'm here now.
There you go.
And I'm healthy as I can be, to be, 88 years old?
Wow.
You're asking me, you're asking me to keep track of your age.
Sometimes I think
I can't remember what I had for breakfast, and you're asking me to keep track of your age.
I had a bowl of cereal.
No. Yeah,
and fruit.
I'm not going to argue with you because you're 88.
Yeah, I'll knock you out.
Yeah.
I still have body strength.
There you go.
At least I'm walking by myself now.
Good.
That's
I'm
awesome.
not on the walker.
And I hear that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You can't argue with somebody who's in their 90s or something about the way they live their life.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they must know something that you don't know. And I'm like, yeah, but, they lived a good chunk of their life before all of the environmental stresses that we all face every day ever had a chance to destroy their ability to stay healthy.
Well, and I'm writing my autobiography.
There you go.
Because I still remember living through the Second World War.
Yeah.
When I was in England.
Wow. That's something definitely.
And meeting the late Queen Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Well, I've told you about that.
Mm-hmm.
But, the kids keep saying, Mom, you've got to write down what you went through, because you went through a lot. And I think most people my age have not gone through that kind of experience, So I'm writing it all down. And, of course, I write something down, and then I remember that. So it's a constant process, but I'm doing it. It's a slow process, but the kids keep telling me, you got to hurry up and do it. You're 88 years old, Mom. I said, I know, but I'm going to live until 98, so leave me alone.
All right. So, Doc, family practice. For again, I joked earlier, Marcus Welby, Dr. Kildare, that kind of stuff. But you work at a hospital, so you kind of are more of the, okay, it's pretty bad. It's not
Yes,
just I'm
yeah.
going to see my family doctor. It's, yeah.
You're there with all of them.
In the sense, yeah. So we, the clinic that I work is right next to the hospital. So anytime something happens, thankfully the hospital's there to help out. And some of my patients do end up going there, and I end up seeing them on and off. And you're right. Once you're in the hospital, you know that you got to be looked at more carefully. And if things are bad, then the hospital's where you're going to end up. And in this case, at least when you mentioned the flu and what we're going through right now, I am seeing some of my patients end up going to the hospital just because of that. And
Yeah.
essentially, it's what we talked about. The immune system's not as strong as it used to be, and these viruses are a little bit more potent than they used to be too, to a certain extent.
Yeah, well, I think, do more older people end up in the hospital than younger people?
Yes, and the data is clear that the longer you're alive on this earth, the more likely you are to end up in the hospital, essentially. So the older you get, the more likely you'll end up there too. It's just the natural sort of process of aging, best way to describe it. It's like having a car. You'll have nuts and bolts, kind of cracks you here, and then
Right.
eventually, you get them
Right.
repaired. And eventually down the line, you'll get something that requires a bit more in depth. So same thing with aging. You're going to feel the cracks and the creaks, and you're going to hear the coughs. And eventually things get really bad where you end up in the hospital, where we have to kind of be a bit more thorough, take care of you, and essentially get you on your way. And the idea is to keep you out of the hospital as long as possible. And if you're in the hospital, to keep you in there as short as possible.
Yeah. Well, I do my walks.
Good.
I like to walk up and down the street, and the kids tell me, Mom, get your sticks, get your sticks. But I've been trying to walk by myself to build up my strength.
I've noticed that,
Yeah.
at least in my practice, our older folks, they like to have their independence. It's important to have that. But
I think it is.
it's vital. I agree, 100%. But there's also a certain line that we as physicians want to be careful of, because independence can easily go into where you have falls and fractures, and
That's
there's
very
other
true.
things we
and
worry
that's,
about.
That's why I walk close to the grass on the sidewalk. Because if I'm going to fall, I want to fall on the grass, not on the concrete. That happens. That's devastating. I mean, you can break things a lot easier and a lot quicker if you're falling on concrete.
Generally, that is the physics of it. You're right, but ideally, we just don't want you to have any falls at all. So
No,
our goal is to make sure you don't fall
I
at all.
agree with
So,
you completely.
Yeah. So that's why we like to have these like walking sticks, or someone with you to walk anytime, just to kind of keep an eye on our patients who are a little bit older, just because we don't want them to have any falls whatsoever, and God forbid any kind of fractures.
No, because that fractures when you're older don't heal that quickly, if they don't heal at all.
Absolutely.
You
And
know?
sometimes they could also be the ultimate cause of death in some of our patients too, honestly. They
Yeah.
could be that severe. And it's important. Independence is important, but at the same time, we want to draw the line between independence and essentially your health. So it is a fine line that we sometimes have to balance.
Now, do you treat youngsters in the hospital also?
Yeah, my main goal is to essentially keep your patients out of the hospital. So I work at the clinic,
Right.
but we do treat young folks as well. And in rare conditions where young people have a diminished immune system, or if they're battling cancer and
Right.
their immune system's not what they used to be, then yes, they do end up in the hospital, because we want to take care of them sooner. Because in those states, they can end up actually being far worse than what we anticipated.
Yeah. That's a challenging business you're in.
It is challenging, but it is rewarding too at the same time. You do get to see that.
Yeah, I can understand that, especially with seniors. When you see the seniors recovering and moving on with their lives, that
Honestly, yeah.
that has to be.
It's very inspiring, honestly. I'm
Oh,
like, hey,
yeah.
if they could do it, I could probably do a little bit of exercise myself. I
Yes.
always try to get myself motivated in that sort of stance as well. And it also helps with the family, because as we mentioned, family practice is not just the patient, it's the family unit that we want to make sure is
Yeah,
treated
because
as well.
everybody is affected. I'm a great grandmother. I have 7 great grandchildren and 6 grandchildren. 2 children now.
Glad you brought that up, actually. So that's the other important part. Since you do have grandchildren, you're more likely to get these kind of illnesses, these viruses, especially in this time, because kids, whether we like it or not, are not as hygienic as we want them to.
That's very true. That's very
So that is
true.
another precaution I would say. I mean, kids bring so much viruses and bacteria to your parents without realizing it. I mean, they have good intentions, but at the same time, these bacteria and viruses do get the better of adults for the most part. So it is important to always practice good hygiene, but at the same time, be cautious, because kids themselves, they're great, love them, but they are a petri dish of bacteria and
That's
viruses.
true. Well, we were at my daughter's home Christmas Eve day and evening, and my daughter said, "Mom, you sit over there. You sit over there. You know, you're away from everybody else, even though they're all around you, but you sit there."
Well, that's a pretty interesting topic. I mean, the distance with these kind of bacterial and viruses, I'm sure you've read your fair share of these kind of literature on it, but I haven't found much success on certain distance. I mean, of course, masking helps too, but ideally if you're in the same environment or facility close by, you're bound to get it no matter what.
Yeah,
Oh,
I always
don't like
had
masks.
my concerns about those recommendations that were being thrown around, typically by armchair, pundits instead of real science, thinking that a mask or 6 feet is going to change something is not very realistic. It's like trying to keep a mosquito away with a chain link fence. The math just doesn't work.
That is a beautiful description.
That is, it's very accurate too.
Just really doesn't work. I mean, if you can smell smoke or you can smell a chemical through this mask, the virus can get through it.
Absolutely. I agree. Some of the literature that I read about this actually is, I mean, the masking, they talk about the particle effects and how they kind of ionize and grab onto it, but ideally I agree. It's the mosquito going through the fence. If you're in the same room, whether 6 feet or maybe even 10, or in the same environment with them, it's a high likelihood you can get them, especially with the flu, which is very contagious.
So the key, from my point of view, the kind of doctor that I am, that I try to lead by example, is don't get sick in the first place.
There you go.
Right?
Take care of yourself.
Because there's docs like Doc Ray here that are there to try to make the best of it when you do have a problem. But you're always better off not getting sick in the first place. And I'm not a hypocrite, and I'm not a pundit. Like, it's not easy these days. I know a lot about this, and I still got sick on an airplane, So it's tough. It's tough these days to stay ahead of it, especially when, wow. Okay, so there's major fires surrounding us right now, and so we've got, that was definitely a fire engine. So, it's tough. It's tough to stay healthy.
Absolutely, yeah. My basic mantra, at least that you mentioned, that is essentially prevention is better than cure. If you can prevent something, it's always better to have a preventive measure rather than a cure. And in this state, like you mentioned, hygiene, vaccines can be effective too. And these days, I've had a lot of patients who are actually a bit more resistant to a lot of the vaccines too these days, just because how it was brought on like 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, it was kind of very strong-armed, and a lot of people, even people who were like, vaccines make sense. After the past 4 years, they're like, I don't trust it. I just don't. This is weird and strange and very strong arm. I just don't feel comfortable about it. Here's the interesting thing. The big shift in vaccines happened way before COVID. Way before COVID. Like, oh, man, I hate to say something and then I don't know the exact facts on it. But let's just say it was something like 10 years before COVID. And I know fact checkers are just, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But all of a sudden, literally in 1 year, it quadrupled the amount of preventative vaccines that were recommended for pediatricians. And I'm like, okay, why? Why did that shift occur? And I'm not pro or anti or anything. I just look at, what the heck is going on? And that's all I care about is this really for the better good. And I can't explain that. Like, I don't think anybody who really looks at it says, oh, yes, well, there was this. That's why this took place. And here's all the positive results we saw from this. Nobody can give that information in those terms.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. And because I've had the latest COVID shot, I've had the latest flu shot, and I'm doing fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I guess that's part of the art of medicine, where we learn, adapt, and kind of get better at it.
And I've beaten cancer twice.
Wow.
I beat it when I was 75. I beat it when I was 85. And I told the kids, if I get it when I'm 95, I'll beat it again.
There you go.
That's good.
All right, Ray. So any pearls of wisdom?
Yeah. Well, in this certain environment, definitely hygiene is important. Viruses are all over the place. Do the best you can by eating healthy, exercising. That's the best way to keep your immune system essentially as toned as it can be. And honestly, with vaccines, talk to your doctor. If you're ever worried about it, let them know, and then they can kind of guide you in the right place. But in this current environment in the winter, stay warm, stay safe, and eat healthy.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
So my little add-on there is a lot of people will focus on food as the main thing, right? Because everybody's going on a diet, or if they're not already off it, because most people drop out by the second week of January. But the whole focus has been food since pretty much Thanksgiving. Like, it's, we're going to eat, because New Year's Eve, we're going to get on the plan, right? The reality is that those in the know, food is not the highest thing on the list. Like, you can go 30 days without eating anything before you're in serious trouble for most people, especially in this country. But you can only go 3 days without two things. So they're 10 times more important, and they don't get nearly the amount of attention. Barb knows one because I haven't seen her in 20 years without it by her side. So what is it, Barb?
Yeah. Water.
Absolutely.
Water is critically important. 10 times more important than the food you eat is hydration. And pretty much, unless you're Barbara Cochran, you're not drinking enough. And two, here's the tough one. Just as important as water. You can go 3 days without anybody in the room. I don't want to put you on the spot, Doc. 3 days without 10 times more than important than food, sleep.
Absolutely.
Sleep will kill you before food ever will.
You mean lack of sleep.
Yeah.
Lack of sleep.
Yeah, so you got 3 days to find water. You got 3 days to get a good night's sleep, or you're going to be in a world of hurt. These don't get the kind of attention they need. So that's critically important. Now, you only have 3 minutes. This should be a no-brainer. 3 minutes without what?
Air.
Hey, ding, ding,
You need
ding.
a break.
Good, Doc. All right. Yeah, 3 minutes without air. Here's the problem. You hear a lot of talk about vagus reset. Now everybody's got these weird contraptions or whatever. The simple act of breathing properly, abdominal, diaphragmatic breathing, is a vagus reset, as opposed to the kind of breathing we all do all the time, which doesn't fill your lungs, which compromises the circulation, your immune system, your oxygenation, all of it, and triggers the sympathetic part of your nerve system instead of the parasympathetic part. So just belly breathing alone is huge. And on that bombshell, Doc, give your contact information, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can contact us at our website, actually, henrymayoprimarycare.com, and we can always get connected there. We also have our phone number, which is on the website as well. And honestly, you could find us online these days. Everything is online. So if you ever need to get connected, or if any questions, or if you want a primary care doc, definitely stop on by and we could get you connected.
Okay.
It is such a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Yes.
Thank
It
you
went
so much.
quick, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, it disappeared.
Conversations are pretty quick.
Yes, yes. But it was good information.
You've been
Good
listening to Senior Hour, KHTS, FM 98.1, AM 1220, hometownstation.com.
Welcome back to the Senior Hour. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Thomas Pilecki, on your hometown station, 98.1 FM, AM 1220, KHTS. And our guest now is Adam Laraway from Focus Physical Therapy.
Hi there.
FFT? Focus Physical Therapy.
There you go. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you, and how was your holiday?
The holiday was wonderful.
Was it?
Had family in and had a nice time. My oldest daughter from college was home, so it was a good time.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And did she look forward to going back?
No.
No.
She went back on Sunday, and then actually classes all got canceled. She's at Azusa Pacific, so they got all canceled today because of the fire out.
Oh, that's
the Eden
right.
fire,
That's
so,
right. It's
yeah.
over in that area.
Absolutely, yep. So, yeah, but they're safe, so that's good.
That's good. That's good. So, what's on the agenda for the day?
Well, I heard you guys were talking about vagus nerve and parasympathetic and sympathetic activity, and so I thought that was a good segue because with the piece of equipment that we use called the Newbie, we definitely do that almost every session. So we use direct current stimulation, which is the Newbie, and we stick pads on the back of the neck where the vagus nerve is, and then we stick 2 pads on the feet. It's called the Master Reset. And it actually stimulates the vagus nerve to improve that parasympathetic activity.
Yes.
And for physical therapy, that's important because a lot of times when people are in pain, they're in that fight or flight because, it hurts. And so they're in that sympathetic state. And sometimes that kind of inhibits their ability to recover. And so we can actually stimulate that vagus nerve in their brainstem and cause parasympathetic activity to improve, which if we can do that, then they can get into a state where they can sleep better, they're going to digest food better, they're going to recover better. And so that's huge for us. And we do another test sometimes that we can actually validate that it does what it says it does. We run what's called a heart rate variability test. And so I have a piece of equipment that we can actually run an EKG of your heart, and then it spits out all this data from looking at your heart rate variability, your heart rate, and tells us what that sympathetic balance is. And it's kind of cool. So literally you could do that test and then do a master reset and then retest it again, and you'll see a huge bump in the parasympathetic activity. So we know it's actually doing what it says it's doing.
Now, this Newbie,
Yes,
you're one of the few physical therapists
Correct.
around
absolutely.
who has this machine.
Yep. Yeah. So
And what got you interested in this machine? How did you find out about it, and where
Well,
did it come from?
it's kind of funny how I got connected with it. So I had been a partial clinic owner for 16 years up in the Antelope Valley, and some things changed with my practice, and it was time for me to change, and so that's why I decided I lived down here, even though I worked up in the Antelope Valley, and so I decided to open my own clinic here. I had run the clinic. I was the director and part owner of the clinic at the old clinic, but we were part of a big corporation. So we were individually owned clinics, but part of a big corporation.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't do a lot of the back end stuff. And so, starting your own business and not knowing that, I decided to hire a business coach. It just, luck would have it that the director of physical therapy for NewFit, the Newbie equipment, hired my same business coach. And so to help him kind of get it off the market, because it literally was FDA cleared in September of 2017. I started thinking about opening my own practice in 2018. And so anyways, my business coach said, Adam, you got to check this thing out. He's a physical therapist as well. He's like, this is like something I've never seen. Like, it's amazing. I've been treated with it. I've seen it. Like, you got to check this out. So I called up, his name is Jason Waz. He's in Florida, and kind of talked to him about it. He sent me some of the research papers and that type of stuff. And so it piqued my interest. And for whatever reason, I jumped in and I flew to Tampa and went and trained with him for 4 days, and I was sold. I saw the changes that he was making with patients, and it was pretty cool. And so I decided to implement it into Focus, because my whole goal for opening Focus was focusing on patient care and helping people. And so I was one of 2 practitioners in California when I got mine. And 6 years later, here I am. I'm now one of their master level instructors, which is pretty cool. It's a pretty elite group. And so it's been quite a whirlwind of treating. I now have 6 newbies, so I'm all in on the Newbie for sure.
Newbies. And you see the results.
I see the results for
Absolutely.
sure. Absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty amazing to help people that come in just with general aches and pains, but then having the opportunity to help people that have kind of struck out in other fields. That's the one cool thing that I think I've seen, is that some of these conditions or issues that people have struggled with and haven't been able to get the relief, we're able to tap into the nervous system and figure out where the brain is sending the signal, and we can get to the root of the problem. You know, the one thing I will say, like, it's amazing to me how some people, it could take 2-3 sessions and they're done. They feel great, you know, and it's pretty amazing to me. I mean, I've had patients where literally can't lift their arm. They come in and they're able to lift their arm, or couldn't squat to put their, you know, leg through their pant leg, and at the end of the session they're able to do it without any pain. So it can be super quick. It can also take a long time. I mean, you know, we worked together for a little bit trying to get some of that, you know, peripheral neuropathy stuff going. That takes time, you know. And, you know, I've worked with some patients for 3 years, but one of them started in a wheelchair and now is walking with nothing. So, you know, it's giving us tap-ins to the nervous system that we wouldn't have otherwise had, and I think that helps us kind of get some of these, especially these more challenging cases, to get some results, which is really cool.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, the combination of physical therapy and chiropractic really saved my life.
Absolutely, for sure. Absolutely.
Really did.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm walking around now without my sticks.
I know, that's a big change from when I first met you.
No sticks here.
Yeah. When I first met you, you had a walker.
Walker, that's right.
You had some pretty racy wheels in there.
Well, if I have to go potty real quick in the house, I'll take that walker and go.
Go a little faster.
Because those sticks, oops, if I catch it on the chair or something, down I go.
Yo.
And I'm thinking, no, you don't need to do that.
Now, you remember we talked about direct orders of no falling down.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I haven't had those problems.
Yeah.
No falling down. It's been nice.
Yep, absolutely.
Absolutely nice. And I attribute it to treatment by both of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the nice thing, you know, when we did stuff with you, we were working on trying to help improve the sensation, because, you know, with peripheral neuropathy, you lose that input, you know, that ability to kind of sense, you know, from your feet where the ground is, whether you're on an uneven surface, you know, a transition. So maybe you're going from, you know, a sidewalk to grass or gravel, or, you know, maybe in your house you're going from carpet to tile. Like, your brain uses that input as you change those surfaces, and if it's not inputting that information correctly, you're more likely to fall.
That's very true. Well, it's interesting, when I'm sitting in my chair, I'll have my feet down and I'll start to walk out and move my feet. And sometimes it gets caught on the edge of the carpet because I have one of those round ones that are an oval that are in the living room. And I think, put your feet further out, Barbara.
Yeah. It's important.
And it really is. It's very important.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we are seeing more patients that are being referred for therapy because of falls lately. That was one of the things I was thinking about talking about today, is that, you know, sometimes you gotta, you know, they may look nice in your home with throw rugs and that type of stuff, but, you know, if they're a fall risk because you're not able to get your toes over it correctly, you catch a toe, and down you go.
And that's right. And I have done that before when I've put my feet down.
Yep.
You know, and from a leaning back position in the chair, and I put my feet down and I find that edge of the carpet, and I put my feet on the carpet and get out of the chair.
Yeah.
Because it would be so easy for me to just flop.
Yep.
Hit my head on the coffee table and another chair and what have you.
Yeah,
and end up in the hospital, and I don't need to do that.
You don't want to do that. Exactly.
No.
Yeah, it's important. So we do, like, you know, especially for patients that are coming in for us either for balance issues or history of falling, like, we talk about that, you know, you got to remove those area rugs and those, you know, those rugs or those, you know, like standing mats and stuff in front of your sink.
Right. Well, it's interesting too, when I get up in the morning, I turn on my side, I'll sit up and I'll put my feet on the floor and sit there until I've gotten myself steady. And then I've got a side table here and a chest of drawers here, and I put my hand here and here, and I can get up and I don't fall. And then if I happen to move, I've got the wall here and I've got the door here, and you know, so I'm I'm taking good care of myself.
Right.
And I've learned that from both of you.
Yeah.
You know, because you've both treated me.
Yeah. We don't want you wall walking though.
No, no, no. That's true.
Because that means
true.
your balance is off. We want you walking with, appropriate devices if needed, but making sure that, your balance is good so that you're stable and you're safe. That's
Well,
crucial.
it's interesting because I'll go out of the bedroom door and go down the hall and turn right and go down the other hall to get into the living room and the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And I make sure that I'm walking
Yeah.
and staying away from the walls because the walls are on both sides
Right,
of me.
yeah.
But if I feel uncomfortable, I do have something to lean on.
Yeah.
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 So no, I'm very conscious
Yeah.
about what I do in the house.
For sure.
Like I said, if I got to go potty, I use that walker.
Yeah.
I mean, when you got to go, you got to go.
Right, exactly. Yep, exactly. Yep. Yeah, and it's important too, like you're talking about kind of your pathway, and sometimes people have little decorator tables and stuff in their hallway with different things on it, and it's important that you have a good clear pathway because when you do have to go to the bathroom, sometimes you got to get there urgent.
That's right.
And you don't
that's
want to
right.
be
There's
walking by and you
nothing-
catch a picture frame that's hanging on a table or something like that.
No, there's nothing in my hallways. They're
Yep.
completely clear.
Good.
Completely.
Good, and that's what we want because we want those clear, safe pathways so that you aren't, catching your foot on something, catching your arm on something that would throw you that balance off.
No, I don't want to fall again. Absolutely don't. No.
Back to the vagus nerve stuff, I wanted to talk about that does help with recovery and it helps with your ability to sleep, which then is going to have, you're going to wake up more refreshed, have more energy, which also will help, when you first get up in the morning. When you first get up, you're getting your bearings, but if
That's right.
if you're getting better rest and better deep sleep to repair tissues and better REM sleep to kind of, catalog all your memories and stuff like that, you're going to wake up more alert and better, aware of your surroundings so that you're not, in that position that, you're having to reach for those walls and stuff like that. So really, really important.
I try to get as much sleep as I can.
Yeah.
And if I don't sleep well at night, I'll find myself sitting in the chair and going to sleep. Which, 15 minutes or 20 minutes of sleep in the middle of the day is helpful because sometimes that happens to me if I don't get a good night's sleep. And there are nights when I don't. Very seldom.
Yeah.
But there are nights when I don't have a good sleep.
Absolutely.
And I don't like those nights.
Yeah. I think I survived college doing 20-minute power naps. They seem to work pretty well.
Yeah,
I guess so as you get older.
So, Adam, we've been talking about the vagus nerve, the importance of homeostasis, basically health, and how most of health is regulated one way or another by vagus nerve function. What is missing from most people's conversation in this whole vagus nerve modulation, reset, whatever you want to call it, is what we do on a daily basis in order to sabotage the way that the vagus nerve functions. Pretty much any stimulant past that second cup of coffee is going to shut down the vagus nerve. Right. And that is missing from most conversations. And some people are doing a heck of a lot more than a second cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Ooh, no, 1 cup of coffee in the morning is that's
Great.
all I need.
Yeah, so that's important. And just the breathing patterns, we've talked about this. You can change heart rate variability just by changing your breathing.
Yep.
Most of us breathe the anxiety breath up high in the chest, which doesn't get oxygen down into the deep beds of the lungs, doesn't improve your circulation, your lymphatic, all your immune system,
And
any
your
of that
stomach
stuff.
doesn't get big.
Well,
When you
that's-
breathe properly, you can tell when it
Yeah.
gets down to your stomach.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah, when your belly bellows, the reason it's called a belly is because it's the bellows. Bellows from like an iron worker. they have this thing that pumps air into the fire. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
didn't realize that.
It's your bellows. The belly is the bellows. But we went away from that for whatever reason. You know, you see babies breathe, they do it automatically. But at some
true.
point, we stop belly breathing. And then it all gets up into the chest. And as we get older, we start to, survive on that. But that totally disrupts vagus function. So just switching that around can be a big benefit too.
Yep.
When we get back from the break, Adam, I want to talk some more specifics about how, what, and where all things Vegas Reset. You've been listening to the Senior Hour, KHTS FM 98.1 AM 1220 hometownstation.com.
0.1 FM, AM 1220 KHTS. And we're speaking with Adam Laraway from Focus Physical Therapy. Okay, what's next on the agenda? Dr. Murphy?
It's your show, Adam. So
I thought what we went to the break for was pretty good stuff. Talking about diaphragmatic breathing, we do a lot of that as well because, when people are in pain, they tend to, not belly breathe, not diaphragmatic
Yeah,
breathe.
they tend to tense
exactly.
up.
And so you're
That's
taking,
right. And you're
yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of factors in that affect you kind of negatively because, when you're belly breathing, you're using a diaphragm, which is a big flat muscle. That helps to contract and descend and push the lungs, everything down. But it's very efficient. So it doesn't take much energy to get that respiration. But when you're accessory in breathing, meaning you're using the muscles like in your intercostals, muscles between your ribs, muscles in your neck, they are very inefficient. Really we only should be using those like when we cough, when we sneeze, if you're really exerting yourself when you're running, stuff like that, that's when those other muscles really should be kicking in. And so if you're breathing that way, you're using a lot more energy than you need to be. And, as we get older, you need as much energy as you can get.
That's right. That's right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. It really does.
Yeah.
Because, when you're not aware, then you don't do things the right way.
For sure.
You don't.
For sure. And there's lots of different things you can do. You can do different drills and stuff where they do what's called box breathing. So maybe you hold, inhale 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, hold it out for 4 seconds, and you do kind of that box. There's different things. There's all kinds of different ones with different techniques, where you hold one longer than the other, stuff like that. There's different pyramids and stuff. You can do stuff with pierced lip breathing. So, you breathe in through your nose, but then you pierce your lips and you breathe out really slowly, and that has been shown
No.
to.
How?
So you would go
like you're
to-
blowing out candles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
But then pierce your
okay.
lips, and then you're going to breathe out really, really slow out. It's hard to do while you're talking, but
Interesting.
But Adam, if I may, so many
Absolutely.
times I've seen keynote speakers up on the stage talking about exactly what you're talking about, and whenever they demonstrate it, when they inhale, it's like this. Like you don't get it.
Yeah.
You don't get it.
Yeah.
Like I don't care what the count is. I don't care what you do with your nose or your mouth or anything like that. If you're straining your neck muscles to raise your rib cage, you've lost. You've lost the
That's
game.
interesting.
yeah, you really have to do it kind of in a relaxed state. So we usually have patients laying down on the table, put a hand on their stomach, put a hand on their chest, and we don't want to feel any raise of your chest, only
Right.
your stomach
Only
hand.
your stomach.
Otherwise, you're kicking in those accessory muscles.
Yeah.
If you take a
Right.
real, well, you just used all those muscles
That's
to get,
right. From here up.
Is
That's
that
right.
very, and that's not very efficient.
No,
You're
that
you're
isn't.
using a lot of
That
energy
isn't.
to quickly take
Instead
that breath
of
in.
stimulating the vagus nerve, which is where we started with this
Right, exactly,
conversation, that actually shuts it off.
Yeah.
Shuts it off nearly completely, and you're purely sympathetic at that point because, as Adam said, those are accessory muscles for emergency situations. And when you're in an emergency situation, your nerve system is programmed to give you that boost of adrenaline, to stimulate the pituitary, to flood your body with all the emergency chemistry. But when you always breathe like that, you're always giving that pituitary that signal to stay in alarm state. Stay in alarm, stay in alarm, stay in alarm, stay in alarm, and it burns stuff up.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too. Like, I'd be interested on your take on this, but I've seen over the years, and I've kind of, I guess, extrapolated into my own, how I train and teach people. But like on National Geographic, when a gazelle's being chased by a cheetah, they're obviously sympathetic. Get me out of here.
Yes.
I got to survive.
Oh, yes.
But it's interesting. They show that, with animals, they have just this kind of innate, reaction that once they've gotten away from that stressor, once they've gotten, that they know they're safe, they go through a shakeout process to actually kind of like release all of those chemicals and all those hormones and all that type of stuff to put them back into that
the
parasympathetic state.
Yes.
And I've heard of classes and stuff like that where they teach people how to do that. I've never actually done that myself. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but it kind of makes sense because you really do. You want to get, you think about if you get scared, because you almost get hit by a car, you feel that rush of adrenaline
Yes.
adrenaline and cortisol and all these, like you said, all these different hormones that your body secretes to get me out of here, make me safe. And, so we have to get you back into that parasympathetic. When your system's balanced, you can get there on your own.
Yeah.
But when it's not balanced, you can't. And that's where people get stuck in that sympathetic state, and they never really, they may be sleeping 8 hours, but if they're not in parasympathetic, they're not getting restful sleep and getting that deep sleep to recover and get into that REM sleep and recover. And then that's why they wake up and they're like, I had 8 hours, but I'm still exhausted.
Yeah. So, there are definitely shortcuts. Unfortunately, most people don't even know. Like, Vegas has been a buzzword for the past couple of years.
It has.
But unfortunately, even people in the know, as I said, are giving really bad advice on how to get there. So it is physical. It can be physical. There's so many different home-based hacks to get there. But bottom line is, caveat emptor, the buyer beware as far as getting into some of these online gurus that maybe shouldn't be dispensing that kind of advice. I'm really interested in the pre and post HRE on the newbie stuff. I want to come up and take a look at that stuff because that is really kind of where I'm at as far as, okay, you talk the talk, do you walk the walk? And it sounds like the newbie can provide those kind of results.
For sure.
Adam, thank you so much for joining us. Give us your contact real quick.
We are at 25050 Peachland Avenue, Suite 205, 661-255-4205, and www.focusptscv.com.
You've been listening to Senior Hour, KHTS FM 98.1, AM 1220, hometownstation.com. We're brought to you by Comfort Capers and Providence Holy Cross. Now go out and enhance your quality of life.